The Kilted farmer, who's also a kilted beekeeper, Justin Fairchild. Hi, Justin.
Hey, how are you, Bart?
I'm good.
Thanks
How are
for
you?
having me on.
Isn't it a little kind of dangerous to be a beekeeper wearing a kilt?
It can be, yes. You use a smoker and plenty of smoke.
We've talked about farming before with you and the different things you raise, but bees, you can't raise a lot of the things without bees. No?
No, bees cover about 40% of our agriculture. Without bees, there are no people.
Really?
So bees are not the only pollinators. There's a number of them that do the work. Honeybees, there's over 400 breeds of bee in Michigan alone. But honeybees are the ones that I focus on because those are the ones that tend to be the least aggressive and the most harmed.
The bees, we've been hearing over the years, there's been various things threatening bees. We've heard about some just bees dropping out of the sky, things like that. Are they endangered?
They're not endangered. The bumblebees have been on and off of the endangered species list. Honeybees have not, but there have been decreased numbers over the years. In the last 2 years, it's jumped dramatically and increased. More people are taking on beekeeping.
Do we need people to beekeep, or are bees just going to naturally find the farms and the crops and flowers and pollinate?
Bees will naturally do it. The point of beekeeping is just to make sure that the hive survive. Also to avoid, because they'll find any nook or cranny, basically any space that they can fit 2 to 4 gallons of honey, they can make a home in. So one of the reasons you have beekeepers is to help prevent them from people getting a bee in their roof or a beehive in their roof or in the side of their wall.
How did you get into beekeeping?
It's one of those things I started when the pandemic went. I'd always kind of been interested in bees, so we started the homestead and started out with 2 hives in the first year, and then I've got 17 hives at my home apiary, and we've got another 7 hives at the Albion College White House Nature Center.
And who's this?
Oh, that's my wife Jessica. So this is from our year 1. She's one of my helpers. So this is kind of just to show, anybody can be a beekeeper if you have, a willingness to learn. It's not hard to learn. They really are pretty self-sufficient.
So you are growing then honey. You're producing a product.
Yep, we do have honey. We typically do it just for the bees, though.
Oh, really? You don't sell it?
We do sell honey, but we don't do it in the same way that a commercial bee company would. We do small batches, and we have to keep a certain amount of weight for the bees in the hive to be able to get through the year.
Sure. Now, what's the difference between raw honey and, whatever else honey is that's not raw?
There's a lot of differences. Raw honey has all of the good stuff in it for you. So you've got your pollens, you've got nectar, you've got your honey. It's natural analgesic. It's really great for allergies. It's really great for colds, sore throats, versus pasteurized honey, which is what you get in the store, is they've killed off anything that's beneficial. It's just a sweet syrup, essentially.
Now, you mentioned the allergies. I never thought about this, but someone said you should use honey from wherever you live if you've got allergies, because it's the bees are, I don't know, what is it? Explain it.
So basically anywhere within a 50-mile radius of where you live, you want a local beekeeper's raw honey from that area, because that's going to have all the pollen that affects you particularly. Versus if you get raw honey from Myers or Walmart, it'll say raw honey. It is raw honey, but it's sourced from all different places, so you're not going to get that mix of pollens and benefits that's actually local to you.
So being exposed to the pollens locally, if you've got allergies, that helps?
Yes.
The allergies?
Yeah. Any local beekeeper, any of us will be able to help.
Do you have allergies?
I do, badly.
And
I take honey to every day.
And it helps?
Yeah. Just a tablespoon, or you can put it in your coffee or in your tea, or it helps a lot.
We have a new urban farming ordinance in Jackson that allows, I believe now people can keep bees in their backyard.
Yes. That's one of the things I'm excited to talk about. the urban farming ordinance, I believe you can have chickens and bees in Jackson. There are some limitations, like each house can have one hive and one queen. You do have to file a permit with the city. I think it's a $50 fee. And you have to get permission from your neighbors, anybody within 100 feet of your house.
Oh, that'll be easy.
But the urban farming ordinance allows for a lot more benefit for the bees because it's going to affect local agriculture. It's going to affect, you're going to see a lot more flowers in the area. You're going to see a lot more flowering trees versus kind of bare looks when there's a lot more bees around.
Really?
Yep.
That noticeable.
Mm-hmm. And there's simple things people can do to help the bees in the area. Like if you put wine corks in your bird bath, that essentially sets little landing strips up so the bees can land without getting pulled into the water.
Wine corks.
Yep.
To float them, is it because of the wine in the cork, or
It's just the cork floating on the top.
cork?
So imagine an aircraft carrier in your bird bath, and they can just come in and land. They love the smell of chemicals, so if you have like a pool, the smell of chlorine, you're going to see more bees than if you don't. So don't worry about them. They're not really going to harm you, but they do stop by for a drink.
That's it. People are afraid of getting stung.
Mm-hmm.
Are these the bees that sting?
So any bees can sting you. Honey bees tend to be non-aggressive unless they feel threatened. Mm-hmm. So like when you get stung out and about, it's usually you were about to step on one.
Ooh.
Like that's when my kids get a sting is if they're walking through the yard barefoot. And granted, we've got 17 hives around, so there's bees. But if they're walking around barefoot, they might get a sting on the foot. Otherwise, I can sit there and I can sit in front of my hives in a lawn chair and just watch them for 20, 30 minutes and they won't bother me as long as I don't bother them. But if I shake a hive, they'll be pretty mad.
Now in September, it seems like we see a lot more bees, like everywhere. It's like bee season. Mm-hmm. If you're picnicking or you're sitting on some patio, there's bees everywhere. Are those the same bees?
Yeah, their season typically begins when you start seeing an average of 55 degrees, and then it'll end when you start seeing an average of 55 degrees. Once it goes below that, they start going into hibernation mode. So the average season usually goes from, May through September, and they'll swarm 2 to 3 times a year.
Are you a resource then for people that want to get into beekeeping?
Yeah. I'm a really good resource. There's a number of great places locally that are good beekeeping locations. There's Des Damp, which is in Albion. They're a national beekeeping group. That's where I started getting my initial equipment from. And then there's also Napoleon Bee Supply, which is locally owned, so I try to go locally owned more so. But there's some good people. They just took over new owners last year. So for people who want to get into beekeeping, next year is when you'd want to do it instead of right now. Because you have to order things in advance, things like that. But I do classes. Mayor Mahoney and I were looking into the Bees in the D program, which is a non-for-profit urban beekeeping. It's essentially like a beekeeping sanctuary where people can go and visit, and they've got hives, and people can take classes, learn about beekeeping, watch them. So we're looking into possibly doing something like that for Jackson, which we think would be pretty cool.
All right. Well, it's growing season too. You got some things you're working on this summer?
We are. I've got a number of projects. I tend to pick up too many projects. But we've got our garden going. We're doing tomatoes, peppers, things like that. But that's mainly for our personal use. And then we've got a couple farmers markets starting up. There's the Sandstone Farmers Market, which is run by Dave and Mary from Mary's Gardens. And then we are looking at potentially setting up a farmers market at Cascades on the north side at the parking lot by the Sleds Hill. But I gotta get the permit approved there. But hopefully we'll get there, So, and then, we're working on getting into a commercial kitchen. We're working with a local church in Concord for that. So that'll be expanding Kilted farmer-wise a lot. And we're also in discussions about doing a monthly community potluck, which anybody from the community come in, bring a passing dish, set up tables, do contests for best dish and stuff for kids, things like that. So things we're trying to establish, but we're not quite there yet.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate all the information. Thanks for being here today.
Being here today.
Yeah, thanks for buzzing by. Good to see you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Bart.
The Kilted farmer, Justin Fairchild.
Thanks, guys.
Stay tuned. We're going to meet